Dashdilik. Welcome to Tibet This Week. Today's headlines are: His Holiness the Dalai Lama congratulates the new President of Taiwan. His Holiness the Dalai Lama bestows Mahakala blessings. His Holiness the Dalai Lama grants audience to devotees, dignitaries from Japan and India. Schools in Himachal Pradesh to implement social, emotional and ethical learning. United States Senate passes Resolve Tibet Act. CTA lauds the unanimous support. Sikyong receives warm welcome from French senators and concludes Europe visit. Department of Home holds Tibetan Cooperatives Conference in Dharamshala. Central Tibetan Administration Delegation attends Taiwan's presidential inauguration and re-establishment of Taiwanese Parliamentary Group for Tibet. Kalon Tharlam Dolma wraps up school visits in Ladakh. The Central Tibetan Administration calls on China to release verifiable information on the 11th Panchen Lama. The Tibet Museum observes International Museum Day 2024, hosts temporary exhibition. His Holiness the Dalai Lama on Tuesday this week offered a warm congratulations to His Excellency Lai Ching-te on assuming as the President of Taiwan. His Holiness in his letter mentioned that it is wonderful to see the firmly rooted democracy in Taiwan, and the Taiwanese people have not only developed a flourishing, robust democracy, but also achieved great prosperity, while at the same time preserving their rich cultural traditions. His Holiness concluded with a wish to the new president of success in meeting the challenges that lie ahead in fulfilling the hopes and aspirations of the people of Taiwan. His Holiness the Dalai Lama on Saturday last week bestowed Mahakala blessings at the main temple in Dharamshala upon the request of Kalu Rinpoche. His Holiness recounted his experience at the Nobulinka Palace, where he visited the Mahakala chapel before departing into exile in India. His interaction with Mahakala and the reassuring nod he felt in response to his prayer, indicating that the issue of Tibet would eventually be settled. His Holiness continued that he feels the continuous support and enlightened activities attributed by the six-armed Mahakala since coming into exile. On Monday this week, His Holiness the Dalai Lama granted an audience to a group of devotees from Dept Religious Foundation, including the individuals from Vietnam, South Korea, Thailand, Malaysia, the United States, and Mongolia at his residence in Dharamshala. On Wednesday this week, His Holiness the Dalai Lama met and interacted with a visiting Japanese delegation consisting of Hiraoka Hirauki, Vice Principal of Sifu Gakuin in Osaka, and Nagao Takashi, a former Member of Parliament and General Secretary of the Japanese Parliamentary Groups for Tibet in Japan. Representative Dr. Arya Tsewang Gyalpo from the Office of Tibet, Japan, accompanied the delegation during the meeting with His Holiness. The delegation also visited the seat of the Central Tibetan Administration. This morning, His Holiness the Dalai Lama met with the Chief Minister of Himachal Pradesh, Sukhwinder Singh Sukhu.
Different religions, no.
His Holiness also granted an audience to Ajay Piramal, Chairman of Piramal Group, and Mr. Rajesh Sharma, representing the Department of Education of Himachal Pradesh, at his residence in Dharamshala on Wednesday this week. Geshe-lop Santenzi Negi, the Executive Director of the Center for Contemplative Science and Compassion-Based Ethics, the parent organization of the Sea Learning Program, was also present at the meeting. Government schools in Himachal Pradesh will integrate social, emotional and ethical learning, that is also known as Sea Learning, into their curriculum. A letter of intent was signed this Wednesday in front of His Holiness the Dalai Lama between the Department of Education, Government of Himachal Pradesh and the Piramal Foundation. Rajesh Sharma, IFS, who serves as the State Project Director, represented the Department of Education, Himachal Pradesh in this partnership. The initiative aims to integrate sea learning into the curriculum, focusing on the holistic development of students by enhancing their social, emotional, and ethical competencies. This collaboration reflects a commitment to improving the educational experience and overall well-being of the students in Himachal Pradesh. Envisioning a human society with genuine sense of concern for each other and collective responsibility for global welfare, His Holiness the Dalai Lama proposed an educational transformation grounded in the perspective that the 7 billion human beings are completely equal in wanting to be happy and not wanting to suffer. Towards this effort, His Holiness minted the idea of universal secular ethics, enshrining the values of compassion, human dignity, empathy, warm-heartedness, genuine sense of concern for others in our vision of prosperity and progress. Through the years, His Holiness the Dalai Lama has officiated the introduction of secular ethics curriculum in scores of universities and schools in India, North America, and Europe. His Holiness noted that fostering love and compassion with human intellect held the key to human flourishing. The United States Senate unanimously passed the bipartisan Promoting a Resolution to Tibet-China Dispute Act on Thursday this week. Sikyong Pembatsering of the Central Tibetan Administration, on behalf of the Tibetan people, this morning appreciated the United States lawmakers' move and expressed his hope in the bill becoming a law soon.
We have proven that if we all work together, we can get things done. So let's wait for getting the bill on the President's desk and to be signed into law. So this, of course, will be a new tool in our hands, and now the Tibetan advocates around the world will have to think about how, considering the political situation in your own country and the political system, how it works, whether we can have laws or resolutions or statements coming from legislators and governments in aligning with how we are proceeding on focusing on the historical status of Tibet as an independent country, and acknowledge leadership of all those within the Congress and the staffers who have worked tirelessly to get it to this point. So thank you all so very much. Thank you.
The Resolve Tibet Act, or Promoting a Resolution to the Tibet-China Dispute Act, was passed by the United States Foreign Affairs Committee in November last year. The United States House of Representatives passed the bill with an overwhelming bipartisan support in February 2024. This bill will strengthen the United States' effort to push the Chinese government to resolve the long-standing Tibet-China dispute through dialogue with the Tibetan leaders. Sikyong Pembatsering of the Central Tibetan Administration concluded his official tour across various European countries earlier this week. During his visit to the 4 European countries, Sikyong engaged with stakeholders, including the members of parliament, government officials, policy influencers, academics, media outlets, Friends of Tibet, and Tibetan community members. During his visit to the French Senate, Sikyong was warmly received by senators, including Senator Jacqueline Eustache-Bruno. Sikyong urged France and the international community to recognize Tibetans, Uyghurs, Hong Kongers, and Chinese pro-democracy movements as partners in driving positive change within China. He commended President Macron's decision to meet him, viewing it as a bold stance against Chinese influence, and encouraged other European leaders to follow suit. Sikyong also discussed parliamentary initiatives on some of the most pressing issues facing Tibet. In particular, Sikyong urged the French Senate to take a definitive stance on the reincarnation of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, similar to the stance taken by the United States government, rejecting any interference from the Chinese government in this purely religious matter. The senators enthusiastically received the proposal and assured plans for special events. In Paris, Sikyong also engaged in discussions with Taiwan Ambassador Francois Chi-Chung-Wu, former member of parliament and founder of the Inter-Parliamentary Group for Tibet in the French National Assembly, Jean-Michel Berlogi, a longtime friend of Tibet, Marcel Roux, and Venerable Lama Jigme Gyatso and Anthony Borsmard, co-presidents of Union Buddhist France. Sikyong visited the Paris coordinator's office, where he met with Tibetan support groups based in Paris. The Department of Home Central Tibetan Administration summoned Tibetan settlement officers and cooperatives for a 3-day conference in Dharamshala on Wednesday this week. The chairman and secretaries of 15 Tibetan cooperative societies and the settlement officers of the respective Tibetan settlements, chief representative officers of Ladakh and South Zone, along with concerned staff of the Department of Home, met to discuss the prospects of the Tibetan cooperative societies. Sikyong Pembatsiring encouraged the participants to suggest solutions for making changes and upgradation to the settlements in order to provide for the needs of the younger generations and strengthen population in the settlements. Sikyong recommended increase of the plantation of cash crops and promotion of cultural tourism in the settlements. A delegation from the Central Tibetan Administration, comprising of Deputy Speaker Domatsiring Tekang, Kalon Nunzi Doma, Tibetan parliamentarians Tempa Yerpil and Tashi Tundup, and Secretary of Department of Information and International Relations Kama Chuying, visited Taiwan this week. On Monday, the delegation attended the inaugural celebrations for Taiwan's 16th term president and vice president, followed by the re-establishment ceremony of the 11th Taiwanese Parliamentary Group for Tibet in Taipei. This event saw the presence of representatives from the Taiwan Immigration Office, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and the Ministry of Culture. The delegation also visited the Tibet Religious Foundation of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, also known as the Office of Tibet Taiwan, where they interacted with Representative Pawa Gesang Gyaltsen and philosophy teacher Venerable Tenzin Namje Rinpoche. Additionally, they held an official meeting with high-level officials of the Taiwan government. A dinner reception was hosted for the delegation by the Vice Chair of the Taiwanese Parliamentary Group for Tibet. The delegation addressed the Tashi Dilek Taiwan event organized by the Human Rights Network for Tibet and Taiwan in Taipei. Taiwanese legislators and professors representing the Taiwan Parliament Group for Tibet and the Human Rights Network for Tibet and Taiwan respectively also spoke at the event. Deputy Speaker Domatsiring Tekang, Kalon Norzin Dolma, and Sigep Rinpoche, the abbot of Tashilimpo Monastery, addressed the press conference hosted by the Human Rights Network for Taiwan and Tibet, commemorating the 29th year of enforced disappearance of the 11th Panchen Lama. Kalon Tharlam Doma of the Department of Education, Central Tibetan Administration, concluded her 2-week official visit to Tibetan children's village schools in Ladakh as a part of her tour of Tibetan schools in India. Kalon Tharlam Doma undertook visit to the remote areas of Changtang and inspected Tibetan children's village schools in Nyoma, Hanle and Sumdo. Kalon took part in the school's morning assemblies, inspected classrooms, kitchens, hostels, dispensaries, staff quarters and libraries, and interacted with students and teachers. Kalon also expressed gratitude for the teachers and staff's dedication to educating Tibetan children despite remote and harsh conditions. Additionally, Kalon visited community guest houses, community halls, and held discussions with the local Tibetan assembly and camp leaders to address urgent needs and issues faced by the residents and schools. Kalon Tharlam Doma Changra attended a function on Tuesday to honor Rinchen Karma Tsomo for her outstanding achievement of 95% in the 12th CBSE exam in the Ladakh Sonamling settlement. Kalon also paid a visit to Magyu and Chushul resettlement project sites to assess progress and meet with the project committee. Following this, Kalon held discussions with the heads and staff of various local institutions within the Ladakh Sonamling settlement. On May 17th, the 29th year of the disappearance of 11th Panchen Lama Gendun Chogyinima, the Department of Information and International Relations of the Central Tibetan Administration issued a statement condemning China's prolonged and forced disappearance of the young Panchen Lama. The statement calls on the People's Republic of China to immediately release the Panchen Lama, who has remained in captivity for 29 years. The spokesperson of the Central Tibetan Administration, Tenzin Lekshe, demanded the People's Republic of China to release verifiable information about the well-being and location of the Panchen Lama, his parents, and Chadel Rinpoche. He emphasized that until the truth is revealed, they will continue to demand their freedom. Members of the Tibet support group in Vilnius organized a protest action in front of the Chinese embassy on the same day. The protesters demanded that the Lithuanian and the European politicians pay attention to human rights abuses in Tibet. The Tibet Museum of the Department of Information and International Relations, Central Tibetan Administration, commemorated its 47th International Museum Day under the theme Museums for Education and Research. In his inaugural address, the CTA's spokesperson Tenzin Lekshe underscored the importance and purpose of the Tibet Museum as a cornerstone of cultural and educational enrichment. He emphasized its role in championing Tibetan culture and national identity as a beacon for sustaining the Tibetan struggle. The Tibet Museum facilitated a full-day program featuring debut of the museum's children kit, a discourse on the significance of museums as focal points for education and research, a complimentary tour of the Tibet Museum and nearby prominent Tibetan institutes, a screening of short documentaries underscoring the global significance of Tibet, and a special showcase by 10 local artists aimed at promoting Tibetan young talent. From Wednesday this week, the Tibet Museum is hosting a temporary exhibition titled Biography of Self-Manifested Chowo Wadi Sangpo. The exhibition will continue through September 2024. So much for this week. See you in the next edition of Tibet This Week. Have a good weekend.